All right, so for this episode, we are going to look at Where Silence Has Lease. Um, yeah, this is the Nagilum episode. This is the episode where we find this weird, creepy thing in space that has decided it wants to play with the crew of the Enterprise to death. Actually, at one point claims that it's seriously considering killing half the crew in as many different ways as it can think of to kill humans. Now, there's several very, very strange things about Nagilum, and what makes this episode so unusual. One of which is the simple fact that Nagilum is one of the um, truly supernatural beings that they actually encounter. It's like, and honestly, some people think it's actually either Q or one of the Q under a different name, because of the fact that it basically does anything it wants. I mean, anything. First off, it creates a void in space that the crew of the Enterprise is like, huh, that's weird. There's a dark hole in space. Then they get closer to the hole, and the hole moves to engulf them. They see what appears to be a Deuteridex attacking them. So they return fire, and the Deuteridex immediately explodes and ceases to exist. No debris, nothing. Then they see another Galaxy-class ship, the Yamato. Like, oh, that's interesting. We should go look at that. Yeah, investigating the Yamato doesn't work as well as they thought it would. And while investigating the Yamato, they notice something very, very interesting. Namely, that the Yamato does not have a logical layout. A Federation starship has a certain set of rules used to decide how the internal layout of the starship should be. And that of the Yamato is nearly identical to the USS Enterprise because of the fact that it's another Galaxy class starship. It's, a mass production model. Granted, not a mass production model that get a huge number of produced, but still, all Galaxy class starships have certain features in common. And this one, they tried walking around the hallways, and nothing they saw made any sense whatsoever, because it wasn't a real ship, and it was Nagilum just screwing with them. Now, one thing about this that gets interesting, though, is what was Nagilum's motivation? I mean, why did he create the hole in space to trap the Enterprise? Um, we actually have no idea. See, the only thing that Nagilum says that's a conclusive answer of any kind is that Nagilum wanted to learn about humanoids. And one of the things about this that's strange, though, is that um, it's a god being that that is acting like a child with a toy, and it like one of those things we have to wonder is like, okay, how many of this race are there? Presumably not many, and how like because it claims to be immortal, so it's old probably, but hasn't actually done this before. Strange. Yeah, attempting to understand the origin of Nagilum, just don't. It's there isn't any origin. which is part of why some people think it's a Q messing with stuff, because Nagilum's explanation for why he's doing things is kind of lol what inducing. Is it this being who has, well, one, we don't actually know of any limitations for Nagilum. If you were to use this in a TTRPG, you could impose limits on Nagilum that were not seen in the episode, such as, maybe he has to stay in deep space. His powers may be vast, but they, because one thing about Nagilum that is mentioned is that Nagilum says that if he meets Picard again, he will see him among the stars, which directly states that if Nagilum and Picard meet again, it will not be on a planet. It will not be in a solar system. It will be in deep space. Now, this is an interesting thing to note because it gives you the idea that maybe possibly Nagilum is a creature of the void. It can't leave deep space. It has enormous powers while in deep space, but it can't leave it. And thus, in order to look at and mess with humanoids, the humanoids have to come to it. That's an interesting idea. And um, it kind of sort of makes it more interesting than merely a cube prank if you look at it from that angle. But like as written, there really isn't a whole lot of depth to Nagilum or even interesting motivations because it's doing the whole like cat with a toy thing where it's like humanoids. I wonder what'll happen if I horribly murder them this way. Like, eh. And the fact that it can create um, lifelike replicas of entire starships just to screw with people. I mean, yes, it is a thing that you can do. However, is it considered? It's not something that directly lends itself to making an interesting character. Because making an interesting character requires it to actually, like have some limitations. And the idea of having Nagilum be limited by the fact that it can't leave deep space, is not something from the episode. It's something that I personally made up. However, it's something that actually kind of sort of fits with the logic used in the episode. Other than that, uh, another thing about Nagilum that's interesting is that we never see the two probes ever again that Picard fired into the void. Um, Nagilum manifests a convincing replica of a Romulan warbird before actually messing with the crew of the Enterprise. How exactly Nagilum was able to do that, we don't know. And Nagilum was able to make a replica of the Yamato that was nearly perfect, at least, when scanned from the outside. Trying to walk around inside it, no, but that was because Nagilum was intentionally warping the interior to be wrong, not because Nagilum accidentally uh, misunderstood the design blueprints. And that's something that's strange here because, Nagilum was able to make all of the walls look like actual walls, but intentionally put them in the wrong places. But the real question here is, how did Nagilum get all of this stuff? Did it literally just read it out of the Enterprise's computer banks? Or is it possible that this isn't actually the first time Nagilum has been doing this? See, it's like at the beginning of the episode, Worf mentioned a Klingon legend about some sort of beast that took the form of a hole in space and ate starships. Um, hmm, that's an interesting one. This is not something that ever gets followed up on. It's just one of those wharfisms, like, oh well, on the in Klingon culture, there's this, and but people are like, lol, no. However, was he actually wrong? Because that's another thing with the wharfisms is that it's not it's him spouting random facts about Klingon culture because Klingon, which okay, kind of gets annoying, but it's not garbage data. And that's where the wharfisms get weird. How much truth was there to that thing Worf said about Klingon ships going missing? Because what Worf describes does in fact match Nagilum quite well. And we don't see, because like all we know about the Klingon legend is that it's a monster that devours entire starships. How? Is it Nagilum stupidity that caused it? Hmm. We don't know. Actually, I just realized that I'm pronouncing it wrong. It's Nagilum, or at least that's how the script says it's supposed to be pronounced. Does anyone actually pronounce it that way? I don't know. Anyways, Nagilum, whatever. Yeah. So if you were to actually use this in a TTRPG, you would need to actually think of a reason why it's doing this. Because random crap for the sake of random crap is an option. Is it a good option? That's the real question. And that's the part about this that uh, you would need to think about as a TTRPG module is that why are you, the game master, having the players deal with this? And that is something that it's basic game prep. Honestly, it's like, what is the bad guy's motivation? It's a simple, obvious thing for basic game prep. But in the case of Nagilum, it's not necessarily something that makes sense to humans. However, illogical it may be, like in this one, Nagilum decided he wanted to kill people, specifically this guy, just to see what it was like for people to die. And he's good natured about it. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm just curious about humans dying. And so he kills this guy. Nagilum clearly does not, shall we say, respect humans as people. He treats them as toys. However, he goes to a lot of work to play with them and doesn't just, smash them with a stick. He's methodically um, breaking them and not just whacking them. And that is where things get interesting because you know, yes, on the one hand, it's um, curiosity, as Picard put it. However, on the other hand, it has genuine sadistic intentions. Not necessarily malicious, but sadistic. And that's where things get, where, as it was presented in the episode, gets weird is that Nagilum's doing this because he's curious, but he's also intentionally doing things that humans don't like because of the fact that humans don't like because it's something that he supposedly finds to be something outside of his comprehension. The exact specifics of how much Nagilum is actually telling the truth, though, is another thing about this. Like, part of the reason why a lot of people came up with the whole idea is like it was really Q, is that Q has actually mentioned on multiple occasions and demonstrated that he is not actually honest about what he does. He will often lie to the humanoids about what he's doing because he feels like it. So the idea that this was a Q prank and not necessarily from the John Delancey Q, but from one of the other Q, maybe one of them, um, is the fact that Nagelum's investigation of attempting to understand humanoids and humans in particular is actually very similar to the John Delancey Q and his trial of humanity thing. It was like, why are you bothering if you're an omnipotent being to just trying to decide whether humans are worthy? That's strange. But Nagelum does something very similar. But with Nagilum, he's not like oh, I'm examining to see whether you're worth of existing as a species. It's like, oh, I'm examining you to understand what it's like to be a creature that can die. Hmm. Yeah. In some ways, it's similar to the Q messing with people, but in some ways, it's different. But it might also be that Nagilum's lying, and if Nagilum's lying, huh? Also, there's the fact that Nagilum actually pops up as an image on Picard's computer monitor. And oh yeah, that's another thing. We never see Nagilum. We genuinely don't actually ever see what Nagilum really looks like. Ever. The green face. We see the green face a lot. However, the green face, Nagilum actually specifically states it's something that he created as a way of interacting with humanoids. It's not real because, as it says here, a data says is that our sensors show nothing out there, absolutely nothing. Nagelum's face isn't real; it's an illusion that was created so that people would have something to talk to and nothing more. Hmm. Again, goes kind. TNG had a lot of god aliens. TOS had several god aliens, but TNG had even more god aliens. And they had several Q plots that didn't need to be Q plots. And several episodes that were originally planned as Q plots that weren't, made Q plots in the end. And was this actually something the writers were planning on making into a Q plot? We don't know. However, from certain perspectives, it would make sense for it to be a Q plot. Anyway, though, um, so yeah, several things that you could do with this because it's one of the few like truly supernatural episodes of TNG because they literally don't find out anything other than Nagilum is messing with them. That is literally the entire episode. Nagilum is messing with them. And why? Yeah, attempting to understand Nagelum's motives. Good luck with that. Attempting to understand Nagelum's origin. The episode barely even goes in there, as they don't actually try to get Nagelum to give them his backstory. They really don't. They were more focused on getting Nagelum to leave them alone, which only happened because Nagelum, um, they amused Nagelum. I guess is the simplest way to put it. At any rate, I guess that's enough about this. So many things to ponder if you were to actually try using this. And, well, I think I hit everything now. So, see you later.